Welcome to Spilling Some Tea on the Frontline. We have the lovely and amazing Leslie Mack and the equally lovely and amazing Chris Love and me, Cessi Sparrow. Today we got a lot to chat about because it's been another wild week of news. And let's start off with these side chicks that this Crane's husband has in what the streets are talking. So, Leslie, let's jump into it.
Yeah, let's jump into this. Definitely. I saw this story on Twitter, and this zookeeper, wild animal professional, or I don't know what his exact title is.
Name is Chris, though.
Crane Whisperer. His name is Chris Crow with an E on the end. Because
Walnut's Boo. His wife Walnut's Boo.
So yeah, so basically, there's this crane species that's very endangered, and so a lot of times what happens is these zoological endeavors happen where they do breeding to eventually release them back into the wild to help bolster the population of endangered species. So Walnut is a female crane who was part of this breeding program, and so she was raised from a chick with humans. And one of the things they didn't know at that time, which was in the 80s, was that there were some measures they kind of needed to take so that the cranes didn't imprint on humans and stop recognizing fellow cranes as their peers. And Walnut definitely, went full-fledged in and claimed Chris Crow as her husband and partner. And they tried to mate Walnut with other cranes. It's a rumor out in these streets that she killed the mates that they tried to pair her with. And so they recognized that having her kill fellow endangered cranes was not a good thing for the program, and also wasn't helping them breed more cranes, which was the goal of the program itself. And so once they realized she had, imprinted on Chris, they noticed her doing things like she would do the mating dance in front of him, and there's video you can watch, it's really funny on YouTube. He starts doing the dance back with her, and one of the things is when they do artificial insemination, usually they have to hood the cranes, and it's actually a very traumatic endeavor. But because this was her actual mate, when Chris went to do this with Walnut, they didn't have to do any of that. She willingly accepted him doing the insemination, and once she lays the eggs, they take them and they actually put them into quote unquote normal crane pairs nest for them to raise. They give Walnut some fake eggs, and Chris has to participate because that's part of the relationship. The male cranes also do part of the nesting and also helps her build a nest. He brings forged pieces over to her. It's really, really wild. But what I found really funny about it is that cranes mate for life. They live to about 60 years old. And at the time of this reporting, they have a lot of time left together is what I'm really trying to get at. A good 30 years. Chris has some really significant job security. But what made this take it to the next level, and yes, Chris is white, is that he mentions that he has several side cranes, if you will, that he also has imprinted on him, and he also inseminates them. And yes, he wanted us to know that he does sometimes call them each by the wrong name, depending on, he forgets which crane he's with. Out here thotting and bopping with cranes. I just thought this story was so funny on so many levels. One, shout out to Walnut for knowing what she wants and getting it, right? Two, I thought it was an inventive, I was really impressed with Chris being well, this is it. Me and Walnut, kind of accepting the situation for what it was. And then obviously now, two things occurred to me. One is, did he kill those male cranes?
See, that's what I think.
Nobody quite knows what happened. That's one. And two, is this his specialty now? Unforced impregnating endangered cranes? I don't know. It's a very specialized skill sets. I'm curious what you all think about it. I just thought it was really hilarious.
Didn't he say that they came to the zoo at approximately the same time? So Chris been
Yes.
knowing Walnut for about 50 years,
They've
15
had
years now.
five children
I
that were
mean,
raised by other people.
that is a relationship that has outlasted most of the people that I know who are married. And he seems to be committed for the long haul.
Very much. He says on his dates, he tells people, like, I do have a wife, and her name is Walnut. She's a crane. Because it's a very big commitment. Like I said, he's got to be there to build the nest, to impregnate her, to make sure he's staying on top of the fake eggs so she doesn't get unhappy. Even when they were doing the story, she was not happy about the reporter. She was jealous of the reporter there. So they have to separate all his side chicks. He mentioned that too. They can never see each other. Like, this is a very intricate thing, and I just found it so funny to me.
The funny thing for me is that he was out there shaking his tail feather too, because
doing
he does
the
her
whole
meeting
dance
dance.
back to her. Oh.
Yeah, this was.
I can't even get my husband to take me to dinner. This dude doing dances. Like, what? What's
multiple times too, because he has to do them for the side cranes or the side chicks as well. Yeah, Chris, I'm convinced this is Chris's, what do they call this? Your evil origin story, or your villain origin story. Your villain origin story, because it's too coincidental how he shows up and he's the only one that can willingly impregnate these cranes, and then he's willingly, helping to do all the rest of it. He's stepped into this role way too easily. I think.
Is he like building a crane army? Like, should we
Yes.
be looking out for this dude?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely. There's going to be a crane.
I can see this story being a children's book or a horror story. One of, you know what I'm saying? Like, it can go
no
either
in between.
way. It can go either way.
Well, again, Chris looks exactly like the type of guy that you would imagine to be.
And the crane is as big as him. That's the other thing.
Yes.
Walnut is a big girl. She's, she's out here. So yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. I believe it. Well, let's move on to this story here about who is the bad art friend.
Yeah.
There's so many levels. There's so many levels to the story. When I initially breezed through it, and then I was like, wait a minute, I got to listen to it because I had other stuff to do. I got to listen to this story. And then I went back and reread it again because there's so many levels. Like, you start out on one side and you end up on I ended up on the completely other side with it, but it's easily to get caught up in either one. So I'll hand it over to you guys. Who wants to start?
Well, I don't know if I want to start, but I will say I dropped whatever I was doing. I had work to do, but I was like, nope, I'm sitting, I'm gonna read. It's long as hell. One of the things that was interesting, one of the subjects of Dorland, she actually pitched the story to the New York Times and to other people. So I thought that was an interesting just bit of information that this was actually pitched by one of the subjects. Not that they came up looking really great, but whatever. And so for those who are not in the know and don't want to read this long ass story, it's about two writers in a struggle with one another over a story that was written I'm just going to be frank and call a thing that was based on this woman's experience, and certainly the kernel of it was based on shaming this white woman for being the most white woman of white women to ever white woman. Okay? And I want to just be very clear that she is on her full white woman bullshit. Like, there's no getting around that fact. And yet, there's a lot of twists and turns to the story that, if you haven't read the whole thing or don't want to, a lot comes out. There's lawyers involved, litigation, discovery, group chats exposed. I mean, this is like the height of, I would say, like 2021, like, I don't know. This story encapsulates so much about the digital era, about the absorption of the social media era, and the way that litigation has been brought into so many situations where it's like, why did this even get to this point? But also, I found it really interesting, and I'm gonna let Chris take over after this. But one of the things I want to touch on is how race is being used and talked about in this story, and I find it really interesting. I always find it interesting when non-Black women of color try to inject race into spaces because they don't know how to do it right and never check themselves. So I want to touch on that because I know we've all had experiences in that area of things. Taylor says 10,000 words of absolute mess. Literal mess, nothing but mess. And it was everywhere. What shocked me and why I wanted to talk about it is because people's takes, at least on Twitter, were so opposite of mine that I was a little taken aback. And I was like, do I need to reread it? Like, then I checked in with some people and I realized, no, I'm right. Go ahead, Chris. What are your thoughts on it?
It's funny because when you sent it, like you had sent it in one of our other groups, and you were like, "You've got to read this." And I looked at it and I was like, "This shit is too long. I'm not reading this." So then yesterday on the way to the zoo, I was telling Michael, I was like, Leslie sent me this thing. It's an hour-long listen, but she wants to talk about it for this show, and I don't know. So I started listening, and then I found myself going back and forth the entire time, depending on what part of the narrative it was. But I don't think I came down on either side. Yeah. I think that both of them were garbage people. And you know, without giving too much of it away for anybody who hasn't and wants to.
Nah, give it away. It's not a movie.
Give it away.
Whatever, give it away.
Basically, one of these ladies, Karen number 1, gives away her kidney, not to a donor, right? But she just has this grand gesture of giving or donating her kidney to anyone who
it's part of these like living donor programs.
Right. And so she develops a Facebook page and she talks about it with all her writer friends because she's part of this writer collective. And so then she notices that one of the women, the other woman that's in her writer collective, hasn't said anything on her Facebook page. So that gave me very much, look at this altruistic thing that I'm doing, that I'm trying to be selfless about, but you haven't paid enough attention to my selfless act. So let me check up on you.
Yeah. So what's going on, sis? Yeah.
Right.
Like that
so
kind
it's
of
like that social dynamic of, you know, doing stuff for the likes, right? First of all, that white savior complex is part of this, right? This woman is like, I've always wanted to give away my kidney and made this grand gesture about it, right? But the other woman, who is Karen number 2, who is half Asian, only half. Half Asian.
Chris wants to be specific.
Listen. She's half Asian, and she reads this woman's letter that she writes to the donor that's receiving her kidney, and she thought it was just a hoot and a holler, and it was. And so on the group chat, and this is pre-signal, on the group chat, all of the folks in the Writers Collective are like dogging this lady out because she's clearly, you know, got some issues and she's got her savior complex. And so this half Karen, right? Half Karen decides to write a short story about a person who receives a kidney from a white woman donor who's doing this altruistic thing. So as Leslie said, for this story from reading this other woman's letter, and she uses actually lifts phrases from the woman's letter.
Yeah, and it comes out later. The original draft was the actual
about
word for word, literally was word for word. And what I thought was interesting, and this is where I find, not to come down on the side of the full Karen, but where I do find some empathy for her is, yes, she's white womaning all over the place, and this is all very absorbed action, but also she was really gaslit continually through this, and I really have empathy for that feeling of I can feel something's off. I feel like these people are talking about me. I'm going to ask them about it. They lie directly to her, right? She lied to her oh, I forgot all about you having a kidney, or you're writing a whole fucking short story about it, my dude. Which is it? Because both can't be true, right? It's just a little sus to me. And I really, because I've been in those moments where it's okay, wait, my intuition telling me something's off. I'm going to just be direct. You get lied to. And then you become the crazy person, right? You become the obsessed, I can't let this go, because you know in your heart that something's off. There was one line in there, because once the especially once they had this first draft and it was very obvious that they lifted. There's a quote where Karen says, I've tried to rewrite the letter, but the way she wrote it is so perfect, right? She mentions that, right?
Yeah.
And when all of this comes out and Karen, number one, shows it to her husband, is like, see? And he's like, oh. And that oh was really where my empathy sat, because what it told me was that even those closest to this woman didn't believe her.
Yeah.
Didn't believe that she even should be thinking that. And all of this could have been really easily handled in the first confrontation.
Right.
She had literally said, yes, I'm right. Oh, yes, I'm writing. I mean, you could just reach out and say, I was inspired to write this thing. I'm going to be exploring issues of race with regard to kidney donation. And you helped inspire this story.
And
you could even attribute it to the hoe. Like, it's not that hard to do. But no, you wanted to kiki kaka about this bitch in your little group chat and be a mean girl. And now all of a sudden it's a white woman's tears coming after you. Girl, that's not this.
Yeah, I disliked that immensely, and I think that probably sits with my own personal biases with regard to anti-Blackness and other people of color communities, especially in Asian communities, and it felt fake to me in that regard. It was just something to shut this woman up. But that never even needed to happen. She could have been like, yeah, girl, I saw your letter. I'll change it. I will not listen to phrases from your letter, but I absolutely got the inspiration from my story for you. It's not your story, right? It's told from the other perspective or what have you, but and then been done with it.
Done with it.
But what whole Karen didn't need to do was call the Boston Globe and call contest and call
she did way too much. I mean, look, and also, like, I respect the petty, like, because there is a way where I'm like, oh, you gonna just lie to me? Like, cool, it's gonna be a flamethrower in this bitch. We just gonna everybody and let it be done.
Let the chopper spray.
Because a lot of these little writer friends who came down on the side of half Karen, they were wrong as fuck too, because they was out here like, oh, if I see my neighbor planting petunias and I write a story about somebody who plants petunias, that's a false equivalency. That's not the same thing. That's something you just walk by versus somebody's actual content they wrote and shared with people. Like, stop making the false equivalencies. Stop with all of it. You can just say you don't like this hoe, and y'all decided that it was cool to treat her like shit. Because and this is the thing that I really wanted to talk about, if the races were switched, okay, and the person who had given the kidney was not the white person, and the person who wrote the story was the white person, the narrative would be so different on social media. And I really dislike the way that race has been inserted here in ways that I know that Larson does not actually have to navigate the world, right? And I really take umbrage with this weaponizing of a racial element, that the only racial element here is that these are two people with a lot of privilege leveraging it in really shitty ways. That's the crux of things. This is not about a white woman's tears. It is a white woman crying on both sides. And both y'all, it's like that Spider-Man meme, just pointing at each other, okay? And I just thought it was really interesting how the narrative on social media has been like, oh, that the first Karen Dorland, she's a monster. I'm like, she's not a monster. She's a human being who's very self-absorbed and probably should be talked to and talk to her therapist about that. And she was harmed here. Like, she wasn't crazy. She wasn't wrong. These people were talking shit about her. That story was absolutely written to put her in her place and was absolutely shaped around the fact that they thought the way she was going about talking about her kidney donation was really fucked up and centered on whiteness. And that's what the story's about. So you don't get to do both of those things.
And I think for me, the main issue, like when I just decided that, well, they're definitely both shitty, but what changed for me was in the very beginning when Larson was recounting the fact that she realized, because she had grown up amongst white people, primarily white people, as a biracial person, she realized a lot of the things they were poking fun at her for had to do with her race. And so when I was reading that, and I was like, wait a minute, like when I went, the second pass reading it, I was like, wait a minute. So you knew what you were doing. You know exactly what you were doing. This was very intentional. You did the same shit to this other woman. And yes, you're absolutely right, Leslie. If the roles were reversed, we would have a completely different spin on this. But the other part of it is she didn't have to give Dorland any credit at all. She could have just said, hey, this letter, is so good, because that's actually what she is, so good. I really want to talk about this in my story. Do you mind? And there would have been nothing, no static at all. But Dorland, I mean, she did the most.
The absolute most.
The absolute most.
There would have been static though, because once she read like the content of the letter, right. I mean the story, she would have been pissed off, right? But I just thought both of them were so thoroughly trash human beings.
Garbage.
That it was like,
garbage.
For me, if the roles were reversed and then the races were reversed, I'd still think y'all are some trash right now.
Yeah.
I have a fundamental problem with I'm always suspect of people who claim to do these altruistic things for no reason and out of the kindness of their hearts. Because ain't nobody that kind.
No, we all know people are trash. Like, all of us. So, no.
And on top of that, if you were really doing it out of the goodness of your heart, why do you need to publicly say what you did? Why do you need to humble brag?
Her whole excuse for that is she's trying to get more people to do live organ donations. She became a spokesperson, and she felt this. All of it is just excusing her obsessive, like self-absorbed behavior. Yeah. And so I don't want to gloss over that. That is really what happened. But also, just because someone acts like that doesn't give you license to lie and be a shitty person. That's what I came back at. Like, you and your friends are really crappy. Christine, I'm looking at you too, ho. Like, I don't care if you got a Netflix deal or be doing stuff with Reese. I don't care. You garbage yourself also.
Yeah.
You actually said, well, obviously I'm biased on this. Yeah, because you backing up your shitty friend with shitty behavior. Yep. And all of you could have stopped this very early on. Yeah. And I do where my because I've been in that situation where I thought people were my friends, and then I got like a treasure trove of text messages that they were talking shit about me. Like, I've been in that situation, and so I know where you sit, because you start to be like, whoa, it's very like disorienting, and it does put you in a very bad headspace. And if you already trend towards that direction, especially as a white woman, it would send you over the edge. Like, I could see exactly how all of this played out, and it could have been such a small thing. And all that would have happened was this white woman would have complained about the story, and that would have been the end of it, right? That would have been that's all she could have done. And so this is where I really am just like, yeah. And also, writers are assholes. I want to say that too.
Oh, that whole Grub Street
y'all really are a group of people that not enough people like let light into enough. I be seeing how you act in public amongst each other. It's a lot of really crappy people that claim to be writers, and not all of them, obviously, not all writers, whatever. But as an entirety, y'all got some work to do. A lot of mess, a lot of stuff y'all need to clean up.
All our friends are not real friends.
No.
And they kept coming back to that too. Like, just because you think someone's your friend doesn't mean that they aren't. And I'm like, yes, and if I was in a collective with somebody and working with them continually over numbers of years, I don't think it's that far out of pocket to consider, maybe I'm not your best friend, but I don't think it's so unusual to be like, how could she think she was friends with these people? Right. You would think you were friends with them too. They never said shit to this woman to indicate that they weren't friends with her, because they saved that for the group chat. So let's be real clear about that part of the conversation too, which is y'all never said to this woman, oh, we don't like you. I have seen some smatterings. I don't remember who it was. Another writer said that they went to a retreat in the woods with Dorland, and that they're going to write a story about it. They're pitching it to the New Yorkers. So there's probably going to be some more stories to come out. And like I said, I'm sure she's the most white woman of white women. But in this particular case, all parties were just so wrong on so many sides. But I found it interesting the way non-Black people of color insert race when it's convenient for them, and when they ignore it when it's not. So that was my big takeaway from the story. And people are still talking about it. It's everywhere. I'm interested to see the think pieces and all the stuff that comes out, because I think it's going to be very interesting to see. But
And if we were going to give a trash rating, I'm going to go back to Leslie's original scale of trash. They would all be styrofoam.
Yeah, everybody's styrofoam. No use whatsoever. All styrofoam. including the editor that accepted this pitch.
Yes. Oh my God.
Whoever they are, them too. They styrofoam also. Because nobody needed 10,000 words.
Black person involved in this kidney donation, the story would have never happened.
Oh no way.
No.
I'm waiting for like the kidney donation folks to pipe up and start, because to me it's like, it's like the reaction to the reaction to the reaction to the reaction. The waves are still going, so I'm very interested to see what happens from here. It's going to be interesting. Anyways, they're both bad art friends. Long story, very short.
Trash. All right, let's move on to getting shit off our chest. Who wants to go first?
You go first.
Yes, I guess it's me. So I have to talk about this, and I don't know if I want to, but I am, because I talked about it with Fresh Air yesterday on NPR. So my friend Krysten Sinema, who is a senator here in the state of Arizona, had some stuff going on these past few weeks. She has obviously been someone who has said that she is not going to end the filibuster or support ending the filibuster. We've got the Build Back Better plan, which she has said is too expensive. And as a Democrat, she won't support the $3.5 trillion plan, but has been kind of elusive about what in the bill she would trim, what she supports, what she doesn't. And so because of this, all of these shenanigans that happened last week with the vote being postponed and her flying back to Arizona for a donor event, Krysten was confronted by some of the activists from a group called Lucha. Shouts out to Lucha. I love them. She was confronted while teaching one of her classes on Sunday morning at ASU, and one of the women that was there, one of the young women that was there, was talking about how she was trafficked. And Krysten had promised to support, undocumented folks and folks that were dreamers, and she's standing in the way of that. And so the girl followed her into the bathroom and recorded her saying very calmly what her beef was. Krysten went into the stall. There were a couple of other people in the bathroom. There was a gentleman outside that was recording from outside of the actual bathroom. And so for whatever reason, I thought this was funny because I thought it was a nothing burger of a story, but then it went national. And, folks are very upset that, the tactics of these activists and, these protesters, and it's just gone too far. And so I was asked to sit down yesterday and discuss that. And the question was, what do you feel about that? I was like, here's the thing, protest is supposed to make people feel uncomfortable. You're not supposed to feel comfortable. And what is a few moments of discomfort? And that's all it was. Nobody died. Nobody got bombed. Nobody got beat up. It was literally just taping something in the bathroom. And not even taping any of the good stuff. I said that I was more offended that people weren't washing their hands longer because we're still in a pandemic, okay? That was the most offensive thing to me. But, what is that few moments of discomfort compared to a lifetime of being scared that you're going to be deported?
Yep.
Or a lifetime of being scared that you're going to be targeted of police violence, or a lifetime of just being scared because of the color of your skin and living in this country. So, I really didn't care about the tactics that were taken, because I think that focusing on the tactics is always a matter of white supremacy to me. I don't care. right? I don't care. I feel like any elected official who is not being transparent should be made to feel uncomfortable by their constituents. Go ahead, go for it. I mean, they were taped her in the airport. Somebody got her on a plane, everywhere, right? Sit with that discomfort. I'm okay with that. I think Cory Booker, who we'll talk about probably a little bit later, his, ushered in to kind of, play Captain Save a White Lady on this and, try to get some folks to sign something decrying these methods, and he can, eat a bag of dicks.
Oh,
But
thank you. You said it. Thank you.
Yes, all of that. We'll get into Corny Booker a little bit later, but I did my thoughts on this situation are multiple. One is I completely agree with you, Chris, that when we're talking about tactics, when tactics are what's being interrogated and not the actual subject of the intervention, we know that white supremacy is definitely in play and white supremacy culture is at play. But also, speaking as someone who has planned direct actions and has participated in them, a lot of work goes into them. I will say, if I'm sure they had a debrief after this action, and there were things that could have been done better, as they always are, but we don't expect perfection, right, from action, direct action. That's not what the goal of it is. And frankly, the fact that it went national actually proves that they did the job that they were supposed to do. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is, like, from my perspective, if I was debriefing it, one of the things I would say is like, a greater image would have been everybody waiting outside the bathroom for her. One, because then you would see that she was actually hiding in there, not going to the bathroom, because now she gets to claim this victim status. That's one of the things you have to, like, kind of counter plan your direct actions around, is like, who is going to be able to claim victimhood in the context of whatever you're doing. But I also want to quote Maxine Waters, because I think she has some choice words on this. Let's make sure we show up wherever we have to show up. This is a quote. I'm quoting her. And you see everybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station. You get out there and create a crowd, and you push back on them, and you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere. We've got to get, she was talking about the Trump administration, but I just want to be clear, those sentiments do not stop just because you have a D next to your name. If you effing up in these streets, expect to see us in these streets as well, wherever you go. Krysten, right. I don't care, okay? I don't know you. I don't need to know you. You're garbage, though. And so you should expect to see your constituents who you made promises to on the campaign trail and in the election cycle that you haven't lived up to. And frankly, we already see the writing on the wall, sis. We already know that D is very temporary for you. And you are literally the epitome of white feminism, TM, and it's really freaking gross. And this crying victim with your little bullshit ass statement that is now being supported by people like Corny Booker, gross. All these Dems signing this letter, disgusting. Shame on all of you. Think of who you're supporting versus who you're against in this moment. Because what you're saying is that these documented individuals and undocumented folks and DACA recipients are not worthy of the promises that you made to them. And that's really disgusting. So I'm going to take my cue from Maxine, because, since that mama said it was okay, so mama said it was okay. All right? Okay.
I think the funny thing about this, though, and, it's the media narrative framing of this, right? It's that there's these progressives. And no. The poll numbers are showing that support for Krysten is declining again among all Democrats, not just progressives, number one. Number two, the campaign promises that she ran on and she made weren't progressive promises, right? They're not going after her for this litany of progressive policies. They're saying, you said you would support us. And just saying you support us is not enough. You have to do the things that manifest that support into some kind of pathway to citizenship for us. Mm-hmm. And I think that she's been able to sit back and take advantage of the fact that she can say, well, I'm for these things, but I'm not willing to do the thing that will help us get to that place. Yeah. And it breaks my heart. Yeah. Like the interviewer yesterday was like, as a Black person, how do you feel about the fact that she is not willing to move on the filibuster, given that it has its roots in Jim Crow? And I said, personally, I'm heartbroken. That hurts me. That hurts me personally. and we are friends. And, you know, I just, you know, even if I said anything, it wouldn't matter, right? Because I'm only one voter in the state of Arizona, and I don't give her a shit ton of money. So it really doesn't matter coming from me. But you know, it should matter because it would be the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just seeing that, you know, politics, political power is a corrupting force.
It
Which
is.
I will never, ever fucking run for anything. Not that anybody will want me to run for anything, because I cursed
They
you.
will. I'm gonna call it down. Chris saying that shit. She's gonna be running for something in like 7 years. So I'm gonna just leave that there. You know why? You know why? Quinn gonna get to high school and something's gonna happen, and you're gonna be like, "That's fucking it. I'm running." That's what's gonna happen. I'm telling you. I'm gonna call it right now. Make sure you hold this tape. Mark the date. What is it? October whatever. October 7th. Write it down, right? At 3:40 p.m. in the Eastern time. That's when I call that. But I do think that one of the things that you just mentioned, I think, is really a critical point, Chris, around what does it mean when a politician says they're for something? For too long, we've allowed just words alone to indicate what someone believes or what they intend to do, and not enough emphasis has been put on what they've actually done and what they're willing to do. And so that is a new litmus test I think we need to really bring into the midterm elections to 2024, if we have a country by then, and so on. So I think that piece right there is like, what does it mean to be for something, to be for a people, to be for a cause? Because if your actions don't back it up, then you're not for anything.
No.
And that's just it. That's just the plain truth of the matter. Yeah.
Another thing that I wanted to talk about, and that's really quickly, and Cessi, I'm sorry, but one of the things that they asked me was about the fact that now there are groups, there's a group in particular, a PAC called Crown PAC, who's raised over $100,000 just in the last few days talking about primarying Krysten. And, you know, that I was asked about Ruben Gallego, because some of the groups support him, and I laughed because you heard me last week, he was on my shit list. And so I laughed, and I you know, tried to be as kind about it as I possibly could, but I think that, you know, great, raise money, do the things to prepare, make sure that we have a bench. But right now, Krysten Sinema is not on the ballot till 2024, and 1,000,001 things can happen before that time. And so I think that the focus on primarying her when we have an election that's coming up next year that doesn't involve her is a bit premature. We don't even know whether or not she wants to run for Senate again.
For Senate, yeah, you're raising money, and I doubt she will. For one, she's not going to want the smoke, and for two, she'll be setting herself up for, you know, the Dem on Fox News.
Right,
spot,
exactly.
You know what I mean? She don't need none of this stuff. Look,
there's more
she could
money
be a lobbyist now. She got more money to make out in these streets. She don't need this no more. This is a stepping stone. And it's very obvious to me by the way that she's not governing, actually. Because people who intend to govern for longer times, they understand the long-term effects and repercussions of their inability to work with the party that they are allegedly supposed to be a part of. And it's clear she doesn't care about any of those things. And it's an indicator that she does not plan to be a career-long elected official. And, you know, it is what it is.
And that, she's setting herself up, and that was one of the things that I told the reporter. It's like, you know, she's showing her wherewithal to raise money, because that's important to show when you want to be a lobbyist or when you want to be a commentator or what have you. And I was like, and that Republican money goes longer than the Democratic money does. That, I mean, that's the long and short of it. So I feel like that whole framing is really premature in the first place. And quite frankly, Arizona doesn't have a great bench. And if she wants to run again, she's got enough money to
do so.
Not being supported by the party.
Yep.
And that's another thing that it's just like, okay, so y'all got to raise more money than the $100,000 in a couple of days.
Yeah, you need a whole war chest, but also you have time. I mean, I think it's an interesting thing to interject the possibility of her being primary. Like, I think everybody should be primaried every election. That's just my opinion. Like, I think you should always have to debate people. I think you should always have to actually say the things that you are going to do when you get in office, because it's really impossible for your constituents to hold you accountable otherwise if you're never on record, and you never have to be on record around anything. So yeah, anyways, that's my take on that. Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Anyways, my shit, I want to get off my chest. As a few years ago, I wrote a little piece that I called hashtag exposure trolling, which was this phenomenon that we continue to experience of like brands and individuals putting very offensive and deliberately agitating content on social media with the intent of getting it to trend because Black people, especially in particular, are offended by it. And that it was something people were using to really great effect. And I wanted to just announce that we have officially transitioned out of the era of exposure trolling, and we are now in the era of cancel trolling. And I define cancel trolling as someone who uses a claim that they have been canceled as a marketing ploy to sell and push whatever fucking thing that they're selling or in or promoting or whatever. It's this claim of cancellation that they now get to put on the shroud of victimhood and say, oh, woe is me, even though I have 16 projects in the works and a talk show every day and I've got all of this stuff, but they're canceling me. So I'm going to talk about how I'm canceled. And that's going to be the crux of my marketing campaign. And so I just wanted to get that off my chest so people are hip to it, because it's really starting to be a thing. And I'm going to specifically name that cishet Black men are particularly zeroing in on this particular way of using digital strategy. I'm seeing you, Kevin Hart. I see you, Dave Chappelle. I see all of you out here claiming you're canceled when every time I turn on any device I have, your fucking face pop up. How are you canceled? Explain yourself. No, this is a marketing ploy. Cancel trolling. That's what they're doing. Yes. Shout out to the comics, because, you know, comedy. Oh, it's so sacred, y'all. Oh, my God. They're going to be mad. Anyways, whatever. I just want to get that off my chest and hit people to it. So, you know, use the hashtag when you see it. Cancel trolling, because that's what they're doing to all of us. Don't get sucked into it and don't believe the hype, because if you're seeing them, they're not canceled.
They're not canceled. Yeah.
Nobody ever canceled.
The only person I've ever seen canceled is, what's her name? Chrisette Michelle. That's the only person I've ever seen actively
But was
canceled.
she on enough to be really canceled?
I mean, she was on more than she is now. So I'll say this: these people are on more now than they ever have been. Kevin Hart is the one that he really perfected this shit, because this dude is always talking about how he's canceled. He got him like 50, 11 shows out. He got three talk shows, a podcast, a audio show. He got a movie out. I mean, it's too much.
Kevin made a whole cottage industry out of being canceled.
Listen,
you know? He's like the epitome of failing up, honestly.
It's just not funny though. Like, you know.
But you don't have to be funny, because what it does is it sets up a scenario that if you don't support him, then you're supporting the cancellation, Chris. And that's the real trick of cancel trolling, is that they actually get supporters. Because here's the thing: people that are as shitty as them are like, well, I don't want to be canceled. So let me make sure I stand up for my dude. Anyways. It's a mess out here, but we're hip to game. We watching you now. I'm gonna see how I can leverage it. I'm gonna start to say I've been canceled, so maybe I could get some stuff. I don't know, but I don't think it works for Black women, because nobody give a shit when we're canceled. So, anyways,
I have a twofer. I got some shit I want to get off my chest that's directly tied to who I want to fuck up this week. I want to start off with, I have felt a way about Cobb County. I live in Cobb County, and my kids were going to Cobb County public schools. And I have felt a way, as have many parents, about the failure of our Cobb County school board and the superintendent specifically, who is, I'm going to point out again, hired, not elected, and has an employment contract, which can be canceled. I want to point out that ProPublica released a very interesting article this week titled "Few Masks, Sick Kids, Packed ERs, How One District's First 4 weeks of School Went Bad." Here's something I did not know until this week. I've been living here in Georgia for about 8+ years. I did not realize that Cobb County School District is the 25th largest school district in the United States. That I did not know. There's a lot of money here. Our public schools are actually great. I think the kids get a really good education. I do know that the schools my kids went to, the teachers, the administration at the schools really seemed to care and were invested in the success of the children themselves and guiding them as they moved forward through their school careers. But this one, quote directly from the ProPublica article is really the crux of the issue. It points out that Cobb County's superintendent and the school board doubled down on their lax COVID-19 protocols, which are the laxest used of any of the 8 metro Atlanta school districts. And as the number, and this is part blows my wig back, the number of Cobb's COVID-19 cases in the first 4 weeks of school, so school started August 2nd, so the month of August rose to over 458%.
Oh.
458%. They're, I'm just like so upset, but they're like lack of even doing the bare basic, which was what they had in place a year ago, has destroyed lives right here in Cobb County. There are thousands of kids who came down with COVID, were exposed to COVID, who ended up testing positive for COVID. You know, we all know about long COVID. I fell into a rabbit hole earlier this week on the Frontline's Twitter, where people were saying not enough of us really understand what long COVID is and what the risks are and how expensive it is. Where was one thread where a 5-year-old, right? 5-year-olds go to kindergarten. That's at the very beginning of your school career. This one 5-year-old, in the span of a year, was COVID positive twice. Twice caught COVID, a 5-year-old. That's wreaked havoc on the family in terms of now having long COVID. And I think the family is somewhere close to over $100,000 in medical debt. Just with the, with the consequences of this, it's ridiculous. There's another, further in the article, there's a family talking about how, in talking to their kids, trying to get a basic understanding of, they're sending their kid to school masked every day. How many other kids are in their vicinity, or, directly around them seating? Who are the other kids? Are the other kids masked or not? And this kid is like, look, I'm surrounded by, 5 to 6 other kids. I'm the only one masked. There's a number of parents who won't send their kids on the school bus. That's part of why I ended up pulling my kids, because they go to 2 different schools. One's in middle school, one's in elementary school. I just could not keep up with driving them both on 2 sides of town. Driving them, and plus taking the school bus was a way for them to get a little freedom after being stuck in the house, all of us together, for a year last year. It just is so upsetting. And then last night I read that Cobb County is, well, I knew we weren't the only district, but to hear that over in Milwaukee, they're having the same problem. And they are now raising money to sue the parents of the disabled kids, or kids that actually need IEPs, where they're required to have someone physically work with their children for their education. They're suing. And the Southern Poverty Law Center down here already, I think that it's a proposed suit. I'm not sure if it's been filed yet, but the bottom line is Cobb County School District was awarded $160 million in federal tax CARES Act money. And they wrote out how they were going to do all this COVID mitigation and all this equipment and stuff that they were going to invest the money in. They haven't done shit, not a damn thing. So they basically stole the money. They have failed to mitigate the spread in the schools. They're barely doing any contact tracing, even still. And I did eventually pull my kids, but the worst part, and this is who I want to fuck up this week. The worst part happened, I think it was either the end of last week or the beginning of this week. One of our sitting school board members, David Ebanks, sent out a blast, like an update, stating that, and I quote, the CDC, saying he has no evidence of this, but he's saying that the CDC has published the adverse effects of the COVID shots on allegedly September 24th. And he's saying that he's calling it the COVID shots, meaning the vaccine. He's alleging that the COVID vaccine in the United States have killed a minimum, he says, of over 122,000 people. He goes on to say that the government is intentionally killing its citizens. This is QAnon bullshit propaganda. This is a fucking man who has the future of thousands of children. He's got that within his purview, within his power. He needs to be removed. This is fucking dangerous. And it has me so furious because we feel helpless. What can we do? You know, you got a stitch of old, well, I hate to say old people, but the nursing home folks who vote for this guy. You know, and they keep voting for him. I think he got reelected recently, but it's like, what do we do? How do we launch a successful recall against him? It's going to be expensive. It's going to take a lot of, feet on the ground and knocking on a lot of doors. But the bottom line is this should disqualify him on his face. You have zero evidence of this. You're lying. This is evidence that doesn't exist anywhere in anything published by the CDC.
But that's the whole thing. They're pushing this like false, fake information. Yeah. And in an age where, and this is something I've been talking about a lot around media, which is the construct of journalism around this idea that there's two sides to everything and that you're a good journalist if you're telling both sides. It has really allowed folks like the QAnon and certainly many members of the right to manipulate and make this seem like this is something that has to be catered to, reported on, spoken about it as if it's real. When in reality, what a journalist should be doing is saying, okay, I'm going to look at what you're saying. It's not factual. And I'm going to make sure people know that it's not factual versus this presentation of, well, here's what these people are saying about COVID and here's what these other people are. No, there's facts and then there's lies. And I need there to be an injection of reality into this discourse that doesn't exist. But also the fact that these are QAnon talking points just also goes to show what you were saying earlier, which is that these two school districts you mentioned won't even go back to the protocols they previously had in place and had no problem with. So it's political. It's nothing to do with anything other than a political insertion into school districts, which is something we've been talking about almost every week, that this is an attack on public schools. Steve Bannon is on a record of saying this is our plan to infiltrate school boards, to ensure that we can change curricula, and then we get to control everything. That's the goal. It's the whole point, is to completely dismantle public education to the point that, folks like Cessi and like Chris are like, I'm not sending my children to that space. And what happens then? Enrollment goes down, funding goes down, and we watch public education as we know it completely disappear. And that's really ultimately what the long tail goal of this is. Why I don't even address CRT or any of that stuff, because it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's an attack on public education. That's what the goal is. It has nothing to do with any of these talking points that they're making up. It's none of that. It's meant to erode our faith and our support for public education across the board. That's what the goal is. And they'll say anything to get at that particular point.
Right. You don't have to be truthful to be an elected.
Nope. Not at all.
Some of the things that, you're talking about, they've been going on here in Arizona as well. So when we were talking about this earlier, I kind of like, yep, that sounds about right. I mean, our governor just got the poof-poo from the federal government for taking federal COVID funds and giving it out to people who want to send their kids to schools that have no COVID mitigation measures, right? And so they told him no. Right, give us our $100 million back, right? And at that, now he's like, well, this is an government overreach. Never mind the fact that he's taken, as the governor, taken the decisions out of the hand of local policymakers to do these things, right? So but it's all about destroying public education, and we've seen it here in particular. I mean, my sister made MSNBC the other night, right? Talking about some of the stuff that's happened here. Chandler has been kind of like the epicenter of a lot of it here in Arizona. But it's one thing. It's either one thing or another. It's CRT. It's equity. It's masking. All of these people are still the same folks. It's the same crowds of folks. It's just they want to dismantle public education.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're being paid for it too. Don't believe
Absolutely. Handsomely.
Right.
Yeah. It's lucrative, folks. Very lucrative. They wouldn't be doing it otherwise. It's very true.
We tried forever to get people to cover it, all of these things together as a story to see, these things are connected. And folks in the media just didn't see it for the longest time. And we were working for over 2 years to get folks to make the connections. And they just didn't see it because they do that both sidesism thing that Leslie was talking about. But that's also a symptom of, these publications being owned by, conservative Republicans.
Yeah, that part. Where are we at? We're running.
We are doing
this week, Lord.
Yeah, we're doing our slice of joy.
Friends. That's what I blame. I blame them. We're gonna jump to what's bringing us joy. Who's going first?
I will do mine really quick because mine is a week late. The gentleman from Philly in his socks and Adidas slides. I have to say Adidas slides because I want to help this man get a shoe deal with Adidas. His babies was playing outside and they were like, "Daddy, there's a gator." I'm paraphrasing. Dude rolled up the trash bin and literally scooped up a live gator. But the best part of this, though, because yes, gators appear all over in Florida. He's from Philly, recently moved to Florida. Gators appear in Florida all the time. Actually, while he was scooping up the big gator, there was a baby gator at his back door. Yeah. Yep. But what I love about this is, most times you hear about gators rolling up on a family, the gator's dead, or, you never hear about it. You hear it whispered, it doesn't make the news. But this guy did what I think is the perfect catch and release. Scooped up the gator, rolled it down the hill to the local swamp, and dumped him in. And the best part was the video. Like, I just watched the video yesterday or the day before yesterday. I just watched the video. My man's in his socks and Adidas slides and his bin literally skipped back up the hill to get the hell away because he's from Philly and he don't play like that. So like that. His name is Eugene Gino Bazzi. He goes by, hang on, let me get his Instagram handle. His Instagram handle is North Philly Gino. I'll put it in the...
Of course it's North Philly Gino. Let me tell you something about North Philly Gino. And also, I love the video was so funny to me, and I really loved the Adidas slide and sock combo is undefeated. Just like when you see that, that's a serious person, and you really shouldn't really mess with them.
And the do-rag. He had on the do-rag too.
But I really want somebody to write like a children's story from the perspective of the gator, like suddenly in a can. I was in my head as you were telling the story, and then they're relocated, hearing the rolling going down the hill and everything. But shout out to Gino, North Philly Gino, and to the gator.
Yeah, he did an excellent job of catch and release. It was a humanitarian effort. Give this man an award. He needs a show on Nat Geo or something. We gotta big him up. We definitely gotta big him up. And he's an Army vet as well. So
right.
Go on, Chris. What's your slice of joy this week?
So Senate Bill 8 in Texas was enjoined yesterday. Yay! explain. Y'all have heard me talk about it for a few weeks, so I won't go into a recap. But the thing that makes me most happy about this is that opinion, because the opinion of the Texas court was like, it kind of smacked down at the Supreme Court, which I really particularly enjoyed. But shout out to whoever that law clerk was who put in a footnote that said, the court acknowledges that not all pregnant people identify as. And I just thought that that was the best thing that I could have seen ever, because we've been beating that drum for so long. And now that the Texas court has not acknowledged it, then the larger repro movement should be acknowledging it as well. And we all need to fix our fucking language. Yeah, I don't want anybody fighting me about it anymore. Let's fix our fucking language.
Yes.
So I'm really happy about that. I'm really happy about SB8. I'm really happy that our abortion ban here in Arizona has not taken effect. So, we live to fight another day.
Mm-hmm. My slice of joy very quickly is that my beloved boys in the band, New Kids on the Block, their mixtape tour got announced. And this year or next year, 2022 summer, they are going on tour with Salt-N-Pepa and Vogue and Rick Astley. I'm very excited about it. They didn't go this year. The last one I went to was last year's show, which had Salt-N-Pepa, Naughty by Nature, Debbie Gibson, and Tiffany. It was a really great show. So I'm expecting this show to be just as fantastic. And my husband got up early this morning and got us amazing seats. So I'm so excited to be able to relive my late 80s, early 90s nostalgic dreams next July. And also, shout out, I want to just talk about the Telfar Bag Security program, which is still on. It got extended. I'm just preaching the gospel, okay? Got extended for 2 extra days. You can still go get your Telfar right now. And I want to talk about what I really love about Telfar as a company and what he has done with this bag security program, which has made a high-end piece of fashion, really, these are bags, accessible to people in a really specific way. But also, I love the fact that it's a prepaid program. I love this idea of not making things that nobody has bought yet. I think it's such an environmentally focused and responsible way of approaching commerce. There's not going to be a secondary or tertiary market that they're going to have to unload bags because they made too much of bubblegum pink or not enough of, ox blood or whatever it is. People buy what they want. They make what was bought, and then you get your bag in a couple months. I just love the whole entire ecosystem of it. And I love that all of us now, it's something to look forward to. Those of us that got one, it's like, oh yeah, I got this thing, and it's not going to come for a while. We need to get back in the habit of being okay with delayed gratification. And I just think it's a human endeavor and concept that we have lost over time, is we've got everything in the palm of our hands and 2-day delivery for everything and It has not done us very good in our interpersonal relationships. And so I really think Telfar is hitting all of these levels with me of the bags are beautiful. It's a Black-owned business. It's adding luxury into people, making luxury accessible to people in a way that's not extractive. And it's allowing us to lean a little in to delayed gratification and a shared experience of waiting for something that we don't get to do that very often as adults anymore. And I really like it. And I love all my girlfriends, I got this color, I got this size, it's been really fun. So if you want to get in on the hype and not have FOMO in March when we get our bags, head over there and get your Telfar, because you can get it. They even have the Klenar, whatever, you can pay for it in installments. Yeah, so there's options there. Mm-hmm. And I just it was just bringing me joy. Even just talking about it with people has brought me joy, because I was like, hey, it's open, you better go. And then they extended it 2 extra days. I just think it's great. I just think it's a really great way for a company to interact with its clientele, and for consumers to be able to get product. I just think it's great.
Yeah.
back and get another one.
I know. I'm
Listen,
thinking about it too.
I'm trying to hold myself back.
I'm trying not
and I
to.
also want to say, if any of my tweets watch this at some point, I tweeted this morning, I do not need a bubblegum pink Telfar bag, just over and over again. And all y'all keep replying to me, yes, you do, sis. You should get it. Let me tell you something. My tip jar is open on my Twitter. You can donate any way you want to. Be the solution, okay, folks? Be the solution. Okay, be the solution is what I have to say to you.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you, ladies. Thank you very much. This is my favorite day of the week, getting to chat with you. And thank you to everyone who joined us. Have a great, almost forgot. We will not be here next week. We are taking a short break. We will be back on, I'm going to guess it's the 21st.
21st? Yeah, I think the 21st.
October 21st.
Shout out to Mr. Ernest Owens. We're not going to be on air because I'm going to his wedding.
All right, guys. Love you. Take care. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.